a small change in your pricing can actually lead to a significant shift in your profitability. Hi there, Kelsey Toner here, the founder of Guest Focused Tour and Activity Business Coaching, where every day myself and our team of tour and activity business coaches are helping you build a thriving, profitable tour business. Welcome to our series on how to price tours, activities, and experiences for profit, a comprehensive training series where we're going to explore some of the fundamentals of pricing strategy. We're going to share frameworks, practical examples, and actionable strategies from some of the most successful tour operators on the planet. Or put another way, we're tackling one of the most challenging aspects of running a successful tour business, pricing our experiences properly. Have you ever struggled with questions like, I just don't know what to charge, or should I be charging more for larger groups? Or if it's the same kind of experience, should I be charging something differently for different subgroups or different niches, or potentially for the corporate market? How do I properly tabulate all of my costs? And how do annual costs factor into all this? Probably most poignantly, why at the end of the year am I just not making as much profit as I want to? The good news is that after working with hundreds of tour and activity operators around the planet, if we can get our pricing right, it's actually one of the most effective ways to grow your tour activity business. It's actually one of the most important levers that you have to ensure your success. So let's get after it. The pricing journey. The best advice that we can offer is to think of pricing as a process. It's not something we do once when we set up a tour, or it's not something we do every couple of years. The whole reason that we leverage these pricing frameworks is so that we not only reduce the risk that we end up selling a product or service, a tour or experience that is ultimately running at a loss, or we end up partway through the year with just not enough revenue, but it's also giving us the peace of mind for when we test our pricing in the real world. That is where the rubber meets the road. That is going to be the ultimate feedback loop on what we can charge and who we can charge it to. There are three main pricing frameworks that tour operators typically use. The first is cost plus pricing. This is the most basic approach where you calculate all of our costs and we add a markup or a percentage on top of it. Every tour business owner should start with cost plus pricing. This is where we're going to figure out the true costs of running this tour and activity business. The second framework is competitive pricing, analyzing what others charge and positioning yourself accordingly. Some classic examples of competitive pricing would be companies like Walmart or Apple. So for Walmart, they built their brand around everyday low prices, where they might even be running at a loss to attract business and drive up significant volume. For a company like Apple, they're charging significantly more for their laptops, for their phones, and other devices. And much of this is done intentionally to indicate that we are at the top of the market. We are the best device that money can buy. The third framework is value-based pricing. This is where we price based on the unique value that you provide to the customer, the client, or the guest. As a simple example, you might have similar expenses to take a group of 20 people out and do a food tour. But if those 20 people are from a company and they've hired you to do team building, the value that you're ultimately providing is dramatically different. If in that corporate event, you're able to reduce churn, people are sticking around longer, maybe they are working more effectively together, then ultimately you're providing significantly more value to that company than to visitors who are just coming on holiday. We're gonna go into more detail on each of these frameworks in upcoming videos. But pretty much for all tour and activity business owners in that small to medium size range, we're always starting with that cost plus framework. We've really got to wrap our heads around some of the on-tour costs as well as your annual expenses to make sure that we are not pricing at a loss. Secondly, we'll lean into those competitive frameworks and basically to understand where our tours and experiences are falling within the competitive landscape. But that value-based pricing model is really where we get to play with those margins when we go out and test in the real world. So why is pricing so important? Well, here's something that most tour operators don't necessarily appreciate, that a small change in your pricing can actually lead to a significant shift in your profitability. Let's take a quick example to showcase this. So let's say that I've got a food tour. My current price is $80 per person. My average group size is 10 people. So the revenue per tour is around $800. The tour cost, let's say the guide fee, food tasting, etc., is around $600. And so my current profit, i.e. all of the revenue minus all of the costs, is $200, or a 25% profit margin just on this tour level analysis. But notice, after just a 10% increase, so the new price is now $88 per person, the revenue per tour jumps up to $880. The tour costs have not changed. That's the important observation here. It's still just $600 to run this tour. And the new profit is $280, which is a 31.8% profit margin. So the result at the end of the day is that small 10% price increase led to a 40% increase in the profit. That's the power of pricing. While your costs, even your annual costs, are going to stay about the same as you test and play with your pricing, all of that extra revenue is going to go right down to the bottom line. Contrast this, just as a thought experiment, with some of the other ways that we typically think of when we're like, okay, I want to grow my profits, I want to grow my revenue. So maybe I'll go out and create a bunch of new tours or products or services. Maybe I'm going to go and find new customers or clients, open up new markets, maybe new distribution channels, or start up new marketing campaigns. All of these are important ways to grow our business. But they all require what? They all require a significant investment of time, of energy, of resources. As guest focused coaches, that's the takeaway we want you to have from this video, is that while many of us are reserved and nervous about changing our prices, thinking that it's gonna collapse our business or have this really significant impact on customer behavior, having an open mind and a willingness to test and play with your prices is actually one of the biggest levers that you've got for boosting your profitability. Now, if you've been following us for a while, you may have heard about our guest focus formula, which simply put is a proven methodology that keeping your ideal target guests at the heart of everything you do as a tour business is the key to unlocking success. When we looked out at some of the most successful tour and activity operators on the planet, we saw that they niched down, they chose that ideal target guest, and they served them better than anyone else. That saying that the riches is in the niches is totally related to pricing and what you can charge for your tour, activity, or an experience. Put another way, our guest focus formula is the pathway to giving you premier pricing. The moment that someone realizes that your product, your service is perfectly in tune with their needs, wants, dream scenarios, and biggest pain points, you have the ability to charge more. You are delivering significantly more value. Or put another way, we want you to appreciate that there is a strong connection between the design of a tour activity experience, who it is designed for, and what you can ultimately charge. So if you're just looking to increase your pricing and you have an undifferentiated tour and we don't have a really clear idea of who this is for, it's for everyone, and there's apples to apples comparisons with other operators in your market, you could struggle with pricing. So sometimes we have to take that big step back and ask ourselves, do we have a clear idea of who we're serving, and are we serving them at the highest possible level? That's where we get true pricing power. What about multi-day tour pricing versus day tour operator pricing? We want to reassure you that in this series, a lot of the frameworks and principles are going to apply equally to both. But there are some important nuances, not only because of a difference in price point, but also because how they are sold, structured, and delivered. Let's have a quick look. Day tours are almost always lower cost, but higher volume experiences when compared to multi-day, where the goal is to maximize the occupancy, i.e. get as many people on the tour as possible while keeping costs per guest low. Because they are often booked last minute and compete with lots of alternate options, not necessarily direct competitors, just other things to do in any given destination, our pricing must balance some of this competitiveness with profitability. With day tours, we almost always have higher distribution commissions from resellers and online travel agents like Viator and Get Your Guide on the larger scale, anywhere between 20, 30%, or even higher. And so a reliance on third-party booking platforms can quickly eat into your margins if we're not accounting for this larger commission. Cash flow is typically steady, but highly dependent on seasonality, weather conditions, making dynamic pricing, upsells, and secondary revenue streams essential for maximizing your profitability. On the other hand, multi-day tours involve higher per customer revenue and some different financial considerations. Commissions for resellers and online distribution tend to be lower, anywhere from 5 to 15%, but booking windows are longer, requiring stronger sales and marketing systems. Pricing must account for upfront seller deposits, there's currency exchange risks, certainly if you're going abroad, and cancellation policies have to be really well thought through to protect your profitability. With these multi-day tours, guests often book months or even years in advance, so offering installment plans or deposits, flexible payment options can increase conversions, but we have to structure these carefully to avoid cash flow challenges. Minimum group sizes, cutoff dates are critically important for multi-day operators. So here's what you can expect in the coming series. We're going to do a deep dive on how to calculate your true costs, both at the tour level as well as your annual operating expenses. We're going to talk about how to build distribution percentages into your products, services, and tours right from the beginning. We're going to be talking about setting profit margins that can support business growth. We're going to talk about implementing value-based pricing. We're going to talk about how we can have upsells, how we can have variable pricing, and other tactics to maximize your revenue. And finally, we're going to explore some of the data-driven approaches to optimizing your pricing over time. In our coaching program, many of our coaches have built and scaled their own tour and activity businesses, and they've been very generous in terms of sharing the tools, templates, and resources that they've assembled over the years of building thriving, profitable tour businesses. One of the most popular has been our Ultimate Tour Pricing Calculator. And guess what? We'd love to hook you up with a copy free of charge as part of our effort to help you succeed, to help find a pricing that works for you and the profits that you desire. If you'd like to get started with that calculator, you can go to guestfocus.com/pricing. We're going to have more videos and training specifically on the calculator, but it's yours if you would like it. If you found this series useful or interesting, it would mean the world to us if you would share it with a friend or colleague. If you're following us here on YouTube, hitting subscribe, hitting like to be notified of the upcoming videos, well, that seems like a good idea as well. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.